5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA online at the Big1050.com. It is MGoBlog Roundtable time, as we do every Thursday around this time. The MGoBlog Roundtable crew is a three-man band, and the three-man band is back. We had lost Seth Fisher for a little bit of time, but he is back. The diehard Tiger fan that he is. He wasn't going to let Craig Ross be on here without him, representing those Guardians. It's like, no, we got to have the Tigers represented well. Isn't that right, Seth Fisher? That's right.
That's right. Eat them up. Eat them up. Dude, I was a Tigers and the Red Wings are starting today, by the way. So now we got another season. How incredible is it that the Tigers have won playoff games in 2024, that the Lions won playoff games in 2024, that Michigan won 2 playoff games in 2024, and the Red Wings and the Pistons won none this year.
Right.
So.
I mean, you know what? Ordinarily, Brian Cook would not want to talk pro sports, but oddly enough, Brian, given the state of affairs, it might not be that bad to talk pro sports today, given the state of affairs for Michigan right now, coming off a loss. But we are going to talk Michigan football, of course. How are you this morning?
I'm good, but if you guys want to talk pro sports, that's fine. I just won't be able to participate.
Well, wait a minute. Isn't Michigan football, NCAA football, basically pro sports now?
I hear you.
I mean, it is.
I hear you.
No, it's because the players can't sign contracts.
Well, Ohio State payroll is higher than the Tigers' payroll. That is true. They keep giving that stat. So there is that. But yeah, no, Tigers, hopefully they close it out today and crap on Ohio. So that'll be good. So, fellas, but we are here to talk Michigan football. They went on the road and they lost a Big Ten game for the first time in 3 years. It was sadly an outcome that you could see the marks on the wall, the trouble in the water, and the mistakes that they were making, kind of leading to this point. They made a quarterback change. It gave them a spark for a moment, but between the turnovers at the end and then the breakdowns that we saw defensively, those things mounted and they wound up losing that game 27-17. Let's get your broad brush reaction, Brian, and then let's get your outlook coming off the bye. What do you think can actually be fixed? There are some things that you just can't address in the moment, and then some things you can. How about you identify those things for us coming out of the bye?
I'm sorry. So I don't want to dump on a particular guy, but I think it's time to replace Evan Link. I've thought that for a couple weeks now. And, Percy acquitted himself decently well, and Link is still grading out as the worst tackle in the Power 5, and it's overdue time for a change. Obviously, you're going to go with Tuttle going forward. I don't know if that's really going to be a panacea, but the offense did feel different with him in there. And since they are apparently not prepared to run the kind of offense that would utilize Alex Orji in a way that would make him an interesting prospect, I just don't think that he's the guy going forward. And then defensively, I don't know, get Jair Hill some cleats. It's a situation where Michigan looks pretty bad if you just look at the raw passing yardage given up, and they don't look a whole lot better if you start looking at down by down stuff. And it's like, well, they have a tremendous pass rush. They have guys in the secondary who seem like they should be pretty good, but they're just not performing at the level that you need them to perform. I don't really know how to fix that, because it's, I don't really know who's what's the problem here.
Yeah, I mean, I have a neck sharp he's just going to run later today. Actually at noon it's going to run, so pretty soon. Where I try to identify what's going on, because they're on standard downs, they're actually still one of the best teams in the country. right? When you try to run into this front, you're dead, right? When you try to just do do a regular play on 2nd and 4, you're less likely to have success against Michigan. You're not even getting a 2nd and 4 most of the time. It's passing downs where they're having problems. And it's not like they're that far away, but when I went and looked at what they did on passing downs, almost every single time they're doing something a little bit weird. Now, a little bit weird is important, right? That's the amoeba defense. We had the system, but to a degree, you have to be good at it before you run it. And last year, they were really good at it, and they weren't as liable to make mistakes. Now, when you make mistakes and you're doing the kind of things that they do, that's going to just give the quarterback an immediate out. If you can run it correctly, it's really hard to play against, right? We've seen them master this system before, but they mastered it with Mikey Samerstill at nickel, and Zeke Berry is not Mikey Samerstill. So the kind of players that they have, they got Jair Hill. He looked terrible in this game. He was slipping all over the place. He looked very timid at some points. Some of the things that I think that fans thought were on him when I went back and looked at him were actually on Berry. But more than that, he's not the kind of guy that you want to have. You don't play him like Josh Wallace. He isn't Josh Wallace, right? He's not a 6-year senior. He's a young guy who's going to make mistakes. Put him in a position where he's going to make fewer mistakes. They don't roll him up very often. In Zeke Berry, they have him doing all the things they had Samerstill do. They're asking guys to be things that they're not. Makari Page has been a solid player for years, and he's making mistakes. And when you go back and look, like, where did he start? He starts down at the linebacker level. Nobody chucks the guy that's coming at him. And then Giles Jackson is now running down the field with him. And one thing Makari doesn't have is the speed to keep up with Giles Jackson. So I think that if they can figure out what they can and can't do, and dumb it down a little bit so that they're only doing the things that they can do, and then work these things back in, I think they'll have more success. But I think I think they had big games at the beginning of the year. I think Wink Martindale is coming from the NFL where he's not used to having players with huge holes in their games. And it's something that they're going to have to work around and figure out who they are. And they got to buy. And so maybe that'll give them an opportunity to learn that.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
On the offensive side, as I said last week, I felt that Michigan would get killed in this game, and it looked like that at 14-0. Then they brought Tuttle in, and all of a sudden the offense had 3 drives where they scored 17 points, and lo and behold, it seemed like Michigan might even win the game. I watched the tape last night and as best as I could, and I'll be interested to see what how Brian grades the offensive line out. I found Prebe to be much weaker in this game than any of the other linemen Michigan had. He was not good in run blocking. His pass pro was even worse. He was by far the weakest lineman, in my opinion, much weaker than Link. But I'll be interested to see. PFF saw it the same way when I went back and looked at PFF. I actually thought Link had a pretty good game in run blocking. I thought he was well better than average. PFF didn't see it that way. They had him slightly below average. They had his pass pro as the second worst on the offense. They also saw Percy is terrible in run blocking and pretty good in pass protection, which doesn't surprise me because I think that's what we saw from him in the past. But I did not think Link was that bad. He had one terrible mistake in pass pro, but he looked like he's improving to me, and I'm not sure I would pull out a guy who's actually making pretty big strides. But I'll be interested in when Brian really goes through it as to what he sees. On defense, Michigan is giving opponent quarterbacks 2.14 seconds and to get rid of the ball, which is really, really excellent. The average is 2.48 seconds.
Is that weighted, though? Because anyone who plays Fresno State is going to look like that number's really small.
Well, yeah, except I think it was about the same in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy got the ball away very quickly. I give him credit. And the defensive line, I thought, was good. It graded out great also in PFF. I think Stewart had a 91.2, which is, you know, a ridiculous off the charts number. The inside guys were all good, including Benny. The only one up front who had a sort of problematic game was Guy. But they graded the secondary out dreadfully. In particular, Barry graded out at 40, which is, you know,
Yeah, he's
that's
coming in pretty
just-
low in my charting right now.
yeah, that's just awful. You know, all of the defensive backs, except for the safeties, graded out poorly. Quentin Johnson was okay.
He was off
according
screen.
to PFF, but
He
yeah,
wasn't. Yeah.
right. Yeah. So I mean, he was boring, which is, I guess, what you guys have argued for safety play. But yeah, I don't know. And the slipping, you know, went on and play after play, which made me wonder and made others wonder about shoes, whether Michigan had the right cleats on, because there sure was a lot of slipping and missed tackles when people slipped. I don't know if that had anything to do with anything at all, but it sure did seem like we were slipping and sliding around on that field a whole lot.
So I think I agree with Brian on, and I'm not picking on Evan Link either, but I think that what we've seen from Jeff Percy at left tackle warrants him getting a look at right tackle when
his run blocking just was not that good. I think if you look at it, Link is a much better run blocker. Pass pro, I agree.
So and because of that, I would give him a shot, because the pass pro has been such an issue, and Percy has only gotten basically a game and a half. Let's see if his run blocking improve. You've gotten what, 6 games with Link. Let's see if Percy's run blocking can get better. Give him a shot.
Is Hinton coming back, as far as you know? I mean, do we know what his?
As far as I know, he's I don't know when, but he's not a season ender. From what I hear, when he comes back, I think Percy deserves an opportunity. On the defensive side of the ball, this, you know, there is an adjustment that I think has to be made to where this team is, because, in a word, it's the inconsistency. The number of busts that they have is, I mean, you see them in every game. They're so costly, and they come on third downs. And it's you have some repeat offenders in there, and it strikes me as an example of you're asking them to do maybe too much. And if it's when you scale back, if they're still making the mistakes, now you're at the point where maybe you got to replace them. That was not possible in this last game because McBurrows is out, Amir Hall is out. You're limited in your options, but still, given that the bust was they were so persistent, I think it requires, in the bye week, you sort of kind of take stock and say, if you're seeing this over the course of 6 weeks, where game after game, the busts are happening on things, and the trap is you'll see them do it right. They're busting things that they do right in games. This is a trap. You see them do it, and you say, okay, they can do this, and then they bust on it. To me, if they do it 2 times right and 1 time wrong, the 1 time wrong is good enough for me to say they can't really do it. I got to see them do it a lot of times right, before I'm convinced that they can do it right.
They do a lot of things. That's the thing, though. You know that they're not practicing any of these things enough. Like the end of the game, they go with a cover 0 blitz, and you know, Wink's now run more cover 0 blitzes than McDonald and Minter ever had in both their careers. I went back and counted in my my charting. So in 2021 to 2023, we ran 3 cover 0 blitzes, and Wink is now at 4. So that's something he likes to do when he needs an out. That's what he goes for, right? He likes to have those cover zero blitzes. In this one, other than Brandon Hillman, falling down on top of the quarterback high, which is a penalty, and Will Johnson, for some crazy reason, the first time they target him all day, he grabs the guy's face mask. It's just, but when you have mistakes, they go back to, we haven't run this very much. We haven't practiced this very much. And you haven't gotten to, because if they ran that play in practice one time and Hillman falls on the quarterback and Johnson kind of flips out a little bit and grabs a face mask, then you're like, okay, guys, this is one thing that could happen, right? You could be in a position where you're jumping and trying to block it, and you could be in a position where he's just heaving it down the field. Let's practice that again, right? Like, let's get this out of the way. Because a million different little things can happen on every given football play. You practice them so that the things happen in practice instead of that weird thing that you weren't expecting to happen coming out in the middle of the game.
Yeah, I guess on that one, Seth, that to me is kind of a back against the wall thing. You're trying to get them out of field goal range.
Sure, I didn't have a problem with the game with the play
I
call.
would go to the call. I would go to the one that you picked out before, where you were talking about the Makari play.
Yeah,
right, where he's it's basically a Tampa 2, and you got a couple of issues on the play. You got Zeke, who's trying to disguise, and he's so far up in his disguise that he can't get back to the half field.
Yeah,
that's an issue. And then you got Makari he's a veteran on the play, right? And your tight end is staying in the block. Well, when your tight end stays in the block, man, I gotta carry the seam right now. When the tight end stays in the block, anything down that seam, I'm going. And this Giles Jackson, this dude can run. Well, he was in his back pedal way too long to be running with Giles Jackson. These are things that, with maybe a defense that isn't struggling as much as this one is, when it comes to when it comes to the kinds of thinking man's football that we saw last year's defense. Last year's defense would be able to make all of these adjustments on the fly, right? They would know how much depth I can get on the disguise to be able to get to the half field. They would know, okay, I know how long I could be in the back pedal. If I got Giles Jackson in the slot, if the tight end stays, I know how long I can stay in the back pedal to be able to run with this guy if he's coming out the blocks in the seam. Last year's defense would be able to make all of these. This year's defense, no, man. Maybe we're gonna not be in the disguise. Maybe we're gonna kind of be in what we're gonna be in, not hold a disguise. Maybe we're gonna be more base in our concepts. We're gonna not have as many pressures. We're gonna have not as many concepts that we're gonna run, and be more vanilla, because we don't have guys who can handle as much as last year's team. That's where I think they are. Yeah, because they bust too much. They just bust too much right now.
Well, it's also the thinking of the coordinator, right? Where do you go back to when your back's against the wall? And that's why I use that example. What do you trust, right? And Wink, I think, is and he has reason to, because of his NFL career. He trusts, I'm going to have the right play call. I'm going to confuse them. I'm going to disguise some things, and I'm going to get them in this play call that's going to mess them up, and I'm going to win on the X's and O's. And I think that was something that when I tried to go back and rediscover the other coordinators, because you can't remember Jesse Minter in his Washington game, right? And say that was it. That was Jesse Minter the whole time. He got a lot of ramp up to that. He got 2 years of playing nobodies, and then Ohio State at the end of the year to get good at those things before they. And then Minter, I think McDonald. When you look at his Washington game, that's when he ran 2 of his cover zeros. That was when he was still learning too. But McDonald, he actually said this. Okay, McDonald said when he came in, he thought he thought it was a play calling league, and he thought he had to do too much. And when you look back at early 2021, the players were being asked to do too much, and they were busting right and left. And at the end of the season, or as the season progressed, McDonald said, look, what do I trust? I can't trust my guys to execute if I throw different things on different guys. I can trust Aiden Hutchinson to win a block.
And here's the other thing. Here's the other thing, fellas. I want you to jump in on this. It really manifests. The bust really manifests against tempo. Surprise, surprise, right? Major issue. I mean, it showed up. I talked about it last week in the Minnesota game where, Taylor scores the touchdown in short yardage because they are totally misaligned. You got Ernest Hausman is lined up outside lined up outside a receiver. Like they have no edge on the defense because they couldn't get lined up against tempo. And in this game, I remember watching on Twitter, like they come with this pressure and the pressure makes no sense. Like they bring 6 and 3 guys are running wide open in the middle of the field. Your nickel is dropping to the field and it looks like they're in 3 deep and he's dropping and there's no one out there. All the work is inside. And it's like, this makes no sense. Clearly, this is a bust, right? Again, against tempo. And so you're seeing an issue that Mike McDonald had. And I remember thinking back to 21, McDonald had an issue with tempo, formation to the boundary, seemingly all the way up into the Michigan State game. I was thinking Michigan State game was like middle of the season. That was game 8. Someone correct me. It was game 8, really, until he got it figured out. He had the benefit of an offense that was better equipped. They played better complementary football. They ran the football. They protect the defense a little bit better. Challenges is more significant for Wink. Like you have no margin for error with this team. Yeah, and they're having the issues with tempo as well, which even is more. The requirement is even greater, I think, for him to be able to have his team be more mistake free, and I think that's why it's even more incumbent to kind of scale back so these guys know what they're doing, even against tempo, because they just have no room for. They don't have as big a margin for error as maybe McDonald did back in 21.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true that the defense isn't getting any help from the offense, and that's making it more difficult for Wink. Also, I mean, beyond, and we talked about this right at the beginning of the season, 97-98, the thought was that would still be a good defense, but there was no Charles Woodson and no Glenn Steele, so it didn't matter what else you had. It was going to decline, and it's clear that Mike Sanderstil was a big deal. And I think it was clear to us last year. It's even more clear now. And probably the same for Michael Barrett. I mean, and so and Rod Moore. So you've got those guys out, and all of a sudden it doesn't matter how good your front is when people are running free in the secondary. And it may be, as you guys are saying, that he just needs to dumb it down. What they do, they have to do well, and they have to do perhaps less. I mean, that's
some guys on Twitter pointed out that the bust might not have been a bust; it might have been a hot coverage, which is basically, remember double A gap blitz from Narduzzi? They used to run coverage behind that.
I mean, that doesn't change the fact that they're completely misaligned and they have no chance of covering that on the snap.
Totally.
So you can't say that it's like, you can't say that, okay, well, they called this coverage.
No.
So
I'm saying
no, but I'm like,
example, but it's grab bag. It's he does. They're throwing new stuff out there that they don't know how to run.
So the point is that there isn't a call in your defensive playbook that says, let's leave this guy wide open.
Yeah, and TJ Guy, you can see him on the play like, I don't know what to do. Like, literally, he's like, I don't know what to do on this play, and he just
but there's this sort of cottage industry of like high school coaches who are like, well, I've coached and these people haven't coached, so like I side with the coaches and it's always the players. Well, no, because like if you call a defense and there's a bust on every other play, that's your fault as the defensive coordinator. Your job as a defensive coordinator is to call plays your team can execute. And so for the defense of that play being like, well, they called hot, that doesn't mean anything because you didn't run hot.
It's not a defense. Well, they did, but
No, I'm not saying that you're defending it, but that was like the pushback on this nonsense coverage that everybody is like, you can't cover this, period.
Right.
Out of this formation. And
Yeah.
so, but we've seen so much of that. We've seen like there's the Zeke Berry blitz against USC where he's blitzing off the slot against zero, which is like obviously a bust, right? But also we've seen Zeke Berry blitz from that wide slot position 5 or 6 times, and like you're blitzing from Mongolia, buddy. Like, what are we doing here? And like, why are we aligning our defense in such a way that one mistake is a touchdown when we have Mason Graham, when we have Josiah Stewart, when we have this defensive line? And if you make teams drive the field, they're going to have a difficult time of it, or at least they would if Jair Hill was wearing cleats. So, like, to me, like, the tempo stuff is really, really relevant because, I mean, as Sam has pointed out, this was an issue that McDonald had as well. And when you get a guy from the NFL who is not used to college tempo, that is a cost. And when you're on top of that, introducing a lot of new players, especially at like quarterback and the defense spots like nickel, and you're trying to run everything under the sun, yeah, you're going to bust. But I'm not putting that on Zeke Berry. I mean, some of it's probably on Zeke Berry, right? Because he's not Mike Sainristil. But you got to know that that's not Mike Sainristil. You got to know that that's not a 28-year-old, 5-year NFL veteran. It's a guy who's entering the lineup for the first time, and the last time he played a lot of ball, it was high school. And you're putting way too much on the plate, and that's why we're seeing the bust rate. And like, you know, Wink dialed it back for the Minnesota game, and it seemed like he was going fairly basic, and that worked out fairly well. And then we get in this Washington game, and there's a little bit of pressure, and it feels like he reverts to like what his nature is, which is like weird stuff, zero blitzes. We see this all the time with coaches. We see it all the time, is that they see the needs of their team and they decide that they're going to call a game differently than they usually do. But when crunch time hits, people revert to habits. And his habit is to like load it up and go, you know, get after the guys. And it's just not working. And we're not seeing enough of an adaptation for me to be particularly confident that this is going to get a lot better this year. Maybe over the offseason, he's able to like, you know, reconsider things. But right now, it just kind of feels like this is what it is. And the offense is kind of the same situation. Like, they had an opportunity to spend a lot of time installing an offense for their presumed starting quarterback. They clearly did not. And now they're just kind of stuck. And they're stuck playing Jack Tuttle, who people were like, well, why wasn't Jack Tuttle playing earlier? There was a press conference this week where he said that he had barely practiced this week, let alone previous weeks. So this is a guy who's coming in cold, who hasn't had many reps. And there was no way to like rely on Jack Tuttle to be your starting quarterback because he's been injured for basically the past 6 years. So it's a new coaching staff, and Sharon Moore is the head guy for the first time for the first time in his career. And this offseason was not as productive as it needed to be. And I don't think they were ever going to be a great team because they lost so much and they weren't able to get a portal quarterback, which is not on Sharon Moore. But I you know, at this point, I'm just kind of done with this season. Like, they're going to play the games. I'm going to watch the games, but I'm not really judging anything that's happening the rest of the year. I hope some players get better, etc. To me, the big bifurcation point for Sharon Moore is how much better this offseason upcoming is than last offseason, which was not quality, which is not enough for this program. And we'll see.
Yeah, I think that there's an opportunity here if they can figure out on offense, give Percy a shot. I agree with you on that, Brian. And they find a little bit of a rudder with Tuttle. I thought he gave them some promise. I think he is much more in the comfort zone of what they want to be offense. Because I agree with you that, you know, for Alex Orji to be the quarterback, there has to be, and that there actually was a coherent plan for him in the run game. Alex Orji. This is the most coherent plan they had all season. There were actually some +1 runs
Yeah.
in the arsenal, right? You could actually this is making sense. And there were like reads on every play. Like he could have pulled almost every play in there. It's like this is all making sense. The run game plan for him makes sense. Now the pass game plan off of that, you got to start figuring that out. He looks like he knew where he wanted to go, but he couldn't. He wasn't getting the passes across the line of scrimmage. So they were not moving the football. So Jack Tuttle comes in and the ball starts moving. Agree with the decision. He gave him a spark. I think it's the way to go because he gives you some of what Davis, from a pass game perspective, gives you, and then he gives you some of the run elements. He pulls it on a duo read, gets a first down. He gives you improv plays. You see him account for on the duo that Donovan scores on. You see the defense. It was a duo kick, and you see the defender, the edge defender, watching Jack Tuttle on the play, and it keeps a lane open for Donovan to get upfield. So
and that's all I've been saying about when you have a quarterback who's able to run. Like you don't need to do it that much for it to change what you're doing. But even with Alex Orji, they weren't doing it nearly enough to make a difference. And it just, and then this most recent press conference, Sharon Moore was saying that, well, we really need to play complementary football. We need our play action to actually look like the things we run. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm glad that, that he said that. Like, I think it's important to acknowledge the deficiencies that you have and then go address them. I think that's what you need to do to be a successful coach. It's just like, why are we in week 6 discussing this? Like, why? Like, because it just like, as you were talking about, Sam, it just doesn't feel like the Orgy related run game had any relation to their pass game at all. Like, they're going under center and running waggles and stuff. And like, that's not gonna take advantage of the things that Orgy is able to do. It's just a waggle with the quarterback who's not very good at throwing the ball. So yeah, I'm pretty disappointed by the first 6 weeks. I'm pretty disappointed just about tactical stuff. Like, obviously a number of the players are coming in well below expectations, but sometimes that just happens. And the thing that kind of, I guess, darkens my doorstep is that I just don't think that they had a very good plan going into the season.
Well, clearly the Orgy plan wasn't good. Yeah. The Orgy plan wasn't good. All right, but I guess if you want to be encouraged by something, I think that Tuttle is in there much more in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, Tuttle, and the guys that they've recruited to be coming in the next few years. I mean, you can include Jaden Davis here, Carter, Brady. Those guys are all JJ-esque quarterbacks. And so should they have thrown over everything and just gone with Orgy this season and just completely changed what they do? I don't know. Like, I'm not a coach. I don't know how easy that is to do something completely different than what you're used to. And then with the long-term plan still being basically what last year's offense was. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's just something that's not realistic. But if that wasn't realistic, you really can't go into the season expecting Orgy is going to be your starting quarterback.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that they're expecting Tuttle now. First of all, last year, whenever they got it, whenever JJ comes out, it was Tuttle time. So they weren't preparing any other quarterbacks.
Well, you can't. The guy didn't play in spring. The guy didn't play in fall. You can't be like, oh, it should be Tuttle, right?
Obviously.
He wasn't available enough for you even to be like, you couldn't plan around him.
No, I think
you can't plan around a guy you can't plan around, which is tautology, but
Yeah, he was. I think last year they were planning on this year being Tuttle and then going down to Jaden Davis or whatever. I think that was when you try to go back and reconstruct what they were thinking. I think they were saying, okay, if we don't get JJ back, then then Tuttle's going to be our floor. That's going to be what we sit with, and that's what they're preparing for. And then my guess is he just didn't come back. He was injured. And they were like, "Oh, what do we do?" So then they talk about Orgy all off season, and and Orgy doesn't work, and so they're like, okay, let's just throw in Warren at the end, and Warren throws 8 interceptions, so now you have to go with Orgy, and they're just completely unprepared. I don't think we were getting the facts from them.
Whatever the plan was, where we are now is Tuttle is in their wheelhouse. He gives them a bit of a spark. We'll see if they can find a little bit more juice from the offensive line. But really, I think it gets back over to the defense. Can they find some consistency coming out of the bye? And I think the key to that is it gets back to, as galling as it may be, being more base, being more vanilla, being more
Galling.
Yeah.
That's what everybody wants.
I know. I'm talking about from a coaching perspective.
Oh, that's what.
I understand from a fan perspective. I'm talking about from a coaching perspective.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got
galling from a coaching perspective.
Yeah.
Look, you're gonna go out there. You're gonna show them exactly this how we're coming. You're gonna know exactly where the pressure is coming. The pressure is coming from our front four. It's not gonna be sim pressures. It's gonna be our base front.
Well, you're
gonna know what our coverage is.
You can do sim pressures.
Right? I understand what you're saying. Seth,
oh, you can.
But a lot of times, more times than now, more times than now, you're gonna know what our pressure is. It's gonna be our.
Sure, but I think that really just comes down to, I think we've been framing it as like, oh, Wink wants to be the hero. I think that coaches want to be the solution, right? Oh, I got this problem. I want to go and fix this. I'm going to be the solution. And you have to sometimes let somebody else be the solution. Your solution should be Mason Graham, not Wink fixes it.
Well, and I think there's you got to understand the context that you're in, right? So last year, Minter had the luxury of having Sainristil and Rodmore and all these guys who could run a billion different things. Like, one of the takeaways from the Washington and Ohio State games is both of those teams had wide receivers who came out of the game saying, like, I have never seen anything like that. So if you can do it, I think it's a good thing to do. Michigan had maybe the best defense of the millennium last year, but it's clear that at this juncture, this defense, the guys in the secondary are not capable of it yet, and we need to simplify.
And in fairness to Wink, that's what he was sold. That, hey, you're inheriting a defense that can, they know all of this. You're gonna come in here and you're gonna be able to run all this stuff, because
Wink did not talk to Nick Saban, because Nick Saban, when Mike Sainristil was drafted, I love this guy. This is my favorite guy. And you know what Alabama's doing now? They're running cover one on 70% of their snaps and getting dunked by Vandy.
Yeah,
like there's got to be a middle ground, right? Like we're seeing with Purdue, we're seeing Ryan Walters continue to run cover one all the time, and his defense is getting obliterated. And when you get as simple as that, you are going to get exploited in play calls. So there's got to be a middle ground. There's got to be something that you can find where you have 4 different things that you're able to do, not 1 and not 12. Yeah. 4.
All right, we got to get to a break. Yeah, there has to be a happy medium. You're absolutely right. Hopefully the bye week is finding that medium. So we got to get to a break. Back on the other side, more MGoBlog Roundtable here on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at thebig1050.com.
Along those lines,
clear on the radio.
Along those lines, did you see Fish's halftime comments? They were very upfront. He said, the whole game has changed now. We were paying no attention to the pass game. Now, he said, we've got to play a more ordinary defense where the pass game is in play. So I thought, yeah, that's what happened when, when Washington was not concerned about any sort of pass game at all when Orgy was in the game.
I mean, here is the sad. This is the sad part for all the busts. For all the busts, they got it. And Donovan slips on of.
Oh yeah, that could be a touchdown.
He's gonna get a touchdown, and the defense goes and gets the. After all of that, they go and get the ball back, right?
Mhm.
And then the offense goes and gives the ball,
And-
and
right.
they're right back on the field. It's like,
Yeah, they had that was I think it was under a minute that the offense had the ball after that interception.
Well,
I think
and
it
then
was
like
something like 50 seconds.
I mean that Tuttle fumble comes after like it's a 2-man route, bro. Like and your primary read got press coverage and didn't get touched. Like you got to throw the ball.
yeah,
Like I don't like you got to
Yeah,
go
he
with
had-
Tuttle, but I'm not thinking that it's going to be a revolution here.
Right. I mean, on that one, he had all day to throw. Yeah, I mean, he had 3 seconds and there was still no pressure, and he decided to scramble.
And like with this offense, like if you got a one-on-one shot downfield, just take it.
yeah,
Right? Like it's not like you're going to have a result that's worse than your usual result. Like and the guy's 6'4", if it's short, maybe it's pass interference. There's just like very little reason not to take a shot on a shot play where the guy is not getting double covered. And he was open deep, and it's just like I had Shea Patterson flashbacks because there were just so many
Yeah.
plays when Shea Patterson was out there where it was like Nico Collins one-on-one deep, and he might be covered, but who cares? Like just throw the ball, and But that's just it's one play. The guy hasn't practiced hardly
Yeah.
at all. Maybe he's just a little rusty, and he'll get a little bit better. But offensive line isn't going to get fixed really this
Yeah.
year, I don't think.
yeah.
But that was you're right. That was I felt Tuttle's worst play because there was really no need for him to scramble at that point. The O-line
take the
gave him
I mean,
all the time in the world.
The micro this season doesn't matter that much. I don't think they're going to win anything big this year. The sword of Damocles hanging over this program is that they're going to put 12 guys in the draft next year, and I don't know who they're replacing them with.
Well,
Yeah,
they're
they gotta
going to
get
have
the
to
portal.
be in the portal.
Got to get in the
They're gonna
portal.
have to
Back on radio in one minute, guys. 1
And
minute back
you
on radio.
can see that because it doesn't look like they're paying much. Well, this may be an overstatement. They're not paying that much attention to 25 recruits. I mean, they got well, they've only got 15, right?
That's it. They're paying attention.
Okay.
Let's look at the recruiting guy. No. Trust me.
They're paying attention. Now whether it comes to fruition remains to be seen. But they're
going to need 8-10
we'll see
guys in the portal.
We'll see if they can close this. They'll either have a phenomenal close or they'll fizzle. But they're
Back in 20.
They're trying to have a phenomenal close.
Well, I think they need a quarterback in the portal. They're definitely going to need a corner in the portal. One, they need probably a couple of offensive linemen. I mean, they're going to need at least 8 guys in the portal.
All
Absolutely.
right, guys, stand by. We're coming back in about 6 minutes in this segment. Stand by.
Craig, stop rocking, by the way.
And we are back on
I'm
radio
rocking.
in 5,
Sorry.
4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big1050.com. Before we get back to the roundtable, want to let those of you who are in the market for a new vehicle know you should get on board with Brighton Ford. Go to BrightonFord.com, call 1-800-NEW-FORD to make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. When you do, you can check out the great deals like the one on the 2024 Ford F-150 XLT, $290 a month with $3,500 down, or $496 a month with $500 down. How about the 2024 Ford Escape Active, $152 a month, $3,500 down, or $312 a month with $500 down. And last but not least, the 2024 Ford Edge SE, $155 a month, $3,500 down, or $339 a month with $500 down. For those and other great deals, get on board with Brighton Ford by going to BrightonFord.com. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD. Make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue over in Brighton, Michigan. All right, so fellas, I mean, it's crazy. It was such an opportunity weekend. It slips through your fingers. I hate using the word slip because we were lamenting the slip by so many slips, but the slip by Donovan Edwards on what would have been, felt like it would have been a touchdown. It was a great blocking by the offensive line on that play. He saw the cutback. It was a lane you could drive a truck through. One-on-one with the safety. It just
Jair Hill slipped on an interception in the end zone too. because he turned around, he had the ball in his sights, and he's starting to back up and get that, and like his foot just goes out from beneath him.
Yeah.
So I mean, those are. Yeah, and there were a couple other times where a defensive end got an edge and he slipped and fell down. But I also, when I was going through it, noticed that Washington's guys were falling down too. They had a 3rd and 5 where the primary target's going to be open because they're playing soft coverage, and the receiver falls down, and he just has to go to somebody else. Yeah.
I guess I only noticed Michigan's guys. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason for that. But
Like when they fell over, it was like, they just suck at this.
But I don't know, but it was weird, man. So we've seen field turf for years now, and we're used to that. Like, they kick up those little pellets, right? And you always see those pellets kicking up, and there was none of that. It was very strange. My cousin from Seattle, who I was traveling with, and he was remarking that it was like it had been dry for a while. So I don't know, maybe like their system is, because we went to the Seahawks game and then people were slipping in that game too. So I wondered if maybe it was just an environmental thing, or like the way that their pellets are supposed to be wet all the time because it's Seattle. I don't know. I have no
They're
idea.
supposed to water pellets. Michigan waters their pellets. They do it. I've watched them do it at the field hockey field. You actually water a non-grass field. So I wonder what they messed up.
So maybe Seattle never realized they have to water their pellets.
Or maybe it's akin to growing your grass really tall and watering it. To give yourself that. To maybe to affect the other team, but
yeah,
but
it was everybody,
right? You got to play on it too.
It rained Friday morning, Seth, in Seattle.
I was
there. It was raining.
Not enough. That's not enough. Seattle needs all the rain, Craig. If it's not pouring at any given moment.
And I was just gonna say though, it's such a weird college football year that if you could just survive, I mean, so many teams are going down. You look at Bama the week after they beat Georgia. They go and they lose to Vandy, and they couldn't stop Vandy. That's the thing about it. It didn't seem like a fluke. If you watch that game, it didn't seem like a fluke at all. Vandy, I mean, Alabama, defensively, they can't stop anybody. They can't.
Maybe Georgia's not that good, Sam. Maybe the SEC is just a worse conference than the ACC or something.
I don't know about that. I know defensively they are very good.
I know. I don't like I think everyone's like, oh my God, Alabama, the #1 team who was ever created, beat the greatest Georgia team ever created, and now Vandy's the greatest team ever created. Like the SEC blows themselves up so much. Like these are college football teams. College football teams are full of college players. They lost some players too. Everyone makes mistakes. It's not that hard to go and to have a really good football team. We're going to see a couple of the best this weekend in Oregon and Ohio State. And a lot of those guys are professionals and they're getting paid like professionals, and they've been playing a while, and even they make mistakes all over the place.
Yeah, I'm really interested. It's going to be interesting from this standpoint. Ohio State, I don't know how much, I don't really feel like they've been tested a ton. Oregon, meanwhile, I watched them and I haven't been really impressed.
Me neither.
I haven't really been impressed with what I've seen thus far this year. So, I could see Ohio State blowing them the hell out, and really kind of showing they're up there with showing that they're up there with Texas, or Oregon kind of finally showing that they're hitting their stride now, and showing that they just had to get used to a new quarterback. In the first couple of games of the season was just them, that was just rushed. It was rust and getting acclimated. Now they've shaken that off, and this is them showing that they are the team that everyone expected them to be and beating Ohio State. So it's going to be an interesting game this weekend when they play.
Yeah, I agree with that. The Oregon offense hasn't looked great when I've seen them. So I'm not sure. On the other hand, playing at Oregon is really hard. It's one of the tougher environments, and I think the coaching at Oregon might be better. So I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen in that one.
I know this. Jeremiah Smith is a grown ass man. Good grief. Yeah. Him and my man down at Bama what's his name? Ryan Williams.
Yeah. Those guys got to make an exception. Let 5 guys go to the NFL every year.
Yeah, they're getting it done. All right, we got to get out of here. Another great round table. Go Tigers, Craig. Go Tigers. Had to get
Yeah, probably will.
had to get that in there. All right, we got to get out of here, folks. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA.